Today's video, off the cuff, I made a short about how to process your drums. Today I'm going to make a quick video on the drum bus. But firstly, before I do that, I'm going to talk a quick bit about how generally I will set my drum bus up in a sense of how am I going to mix each individual channel. The first thing I always do is organise my projects. I'm a very organised person when it comes to music production, and all the green ones are our drums. We've got transient shaper and an EQ. So this is the way I'd sort of set up our drums as a whole. The first thing you want to do is obviously EQ everything, right? You want to make sure that we're cutting out everything below around 180 hertz. People say 200, some people say 300. 300's a bit extreme, 200 depends. 180 I'd say generally all round, but if there's a bit too much low end coming through, then I would take that off. And generally, you want to find frequencies that make that instrument sound good. So for example, this snare, I want to find the frequencies that make it sound good. So with Pro Q, this is quite easy to do, but you can do this with any EQ. You want to make a bell curve and you just want to boost and sort of sweep and find frequencies that make this drum sound good. We've removed what sounds bad with the low cut, and if anything sounds bad after this low cut, we can reduce first. But once we've reduced and got rid of all the problems in the drum, then we want to boost the frequency that makes it sound good. So for example, so around there, it's got a nice bit of top end to it. But then with a snare, you also want to boost the bottom end just a little bit, around 400 hertz-ish, just depends. Yeah, somewhere around there sounds good. And you only want to boost this around 1 to 2 dBs. And try and make the curves broad if you can, the Q, sorry, not the curve. But if not, if it needs to be more specific, then don't, you can make it more specific. So once you've done that, I would then recommend putting a transient shaper on. So on the transient shaper, I typically just reduce some sustain. This one's from Kilohertz. I use this all the time and it's really good because we've got the pump knob as well. So a lot of the times you want to get rid of the sustain to get rid of the tail and the reverb, but the pump helps you sort of just have that transient poke out if you want that effect. But you can also boost the attack as well, just to get it to pop out the mix a little bit. But what you're doing here is shaping the drum audio-wise. You could do this with a compressor as well, but transient shaper is just a little bit easier to work with. And this one from Kilohertz is free. So, for example, see how the reverb gets boosted? We're trying to get rid of that. And then if we need to boost some of the transients, get it ticking a little bit more, get it to poke out the mix, you can. Just don't go overboard. And then finally, I'd put a little bit of compression on any instrument that's either lacking a bit of punch and needs those sort of quieter frequencies in the mix to help the punch. Or if you've got a drum loop that's just a little bit too inconsistent in volume. So for example, with this drum loop, I'd put the compressor on here and I'd probably just, if I solo it, I put the attack to something that's a bit more suitable for drums, maybe anywhere from 10 to 30 to 50. Those are rough numbers. I'm not the best with the drum compression attack and release settings, but anywhere from 10 to 30 sounds good when you're putting it on a bus, but individually it kind of varies. Put it on 20 for now. The release you want to keep quicker because the drums, when the compressor hits the lowest point, you want it to quickly get back up again so that it can hit the next transient. A slower release time would be better for like a more sustained instrument, like a singy vocal or a pad, for example. Keep that release time short. Keep the ratio anywhere from 3 to 5. You can go a bit more extreme if you want to squash a sound. And we're essentially just trying to get this top bit here, these top bits to just come down a bit. So if they're not really coming down after you've got like -3 gain reduction, then reduce the attack. That's what you want to do. See how now it's actually reducing the volume? It's because that attack is clamping down straight away. As soon as that transient cuts through, bam, we're cutting it down. But if you want to keep that punch, but you just want everything after the punch to be quite squashed, then that's when you make the attack a bit longer. Cool. So to reiterate, you want this to be more towards fast if you want to squash the sound, and more towards middle slow if you want that punch, but you want it to be a bit more compact. like the drum sound to be compact, but you want to preserve that punch. Cool. So once you've done those three, you should be all right. You might want to add a bit of width to maybe some hats, but don't be careful with this. You can cause phasing issues, especially if you're using hats that sound similar. So like a 909 and a 909 variant, and you've got them on top of each other, especially with a bit of width, could cause phasing issues. But sometimes it doesn't. Especially with the FL Studio spreader, it is quite good for that. So just be careful with widening the hats. But widening some perks is good as well. Just, these are all context dependent things. Try these things, see what works. But with your drums, you want a good balance of those main drums hitting down the middle, those not as important drums on the side, but also layering the main drums with some side, some width in them. So maybe a wide layer, a layer pan left, a layer pan right. You can sort of explore with these things, but good bit of width, a lot of impact down the middle. Don't want the drums to be too open. You want to close them with the transient shaper. Boost the attack a little bit if needed, and boost the frequencies that sound good and reduce the frequencies that sound bad. And then your compression. So let's move on to the drums now. So as a drum bus, I'll always start off with Soothe 2 or some sort of EQ that sort of reduces frequencies that are being a bit resonant. I'll make a full video on how to deal with resonant frequencies soon, but essentially you want to make your EQ tight like this, and you want to sweep and find the frequencies. So like that one, for example, is quite too in your face. If we reduce it by about 3 decibels, that resonance stops being as ringy. Now the resonances, I've noticed, are quite noticeable on loud sound systems. So even though you might not think it's doing anything, I promise you, dealing with these resonances makes a massive difference, especially when playing on a louder system and in a big sound system. So once you've sort of done resonant frequencies, kind of dealing with those, you want to move on to some parallel compression. Now, I might make a little patcher preset for you guys, but essentially, you want to set up patcher like this. One side the dry signal, so you can literally just do that by dragging out from there. And then you want to drag another one out to a compressor and squash it. Then once you've squashed it, you could do a bit of transient shaping just to get rid of some attack and some sustain. You don't have to, but the attack sometimes can get through if you've not set your compressor to have a really short attack time. Then you want to just blend it in about 30%. That's about 30%. Anywhere from 20 to 40% works quite well. Then we come in with a bit of saturation. You can use any saturator, decapitator. I use Twin Tube because it's a bit more subtle and it's got this harmonics mode, but I've not used the harmonics mode today. Don't overthink this bit, just crank it a decent bit. You want it to sound a little bit different than it usually does. It kind of adds a bit of glue on top of what's already there. I like to use Vitamin for parallel distortion. I use this punch knob as well. You don't necessarily have to do this. I think I mainly use this to beef up certain frequencies and add a bit of width. At the bottom here, you can see the width. It's a really good plugin for just beefing up sounds without making them louder. But you don't necessarily need to do this if you've got the saturation down right. I just like to split it between 2 so that I can control and dial it in quite well. But if you've got Saturn 2, this works just as well. The important thing is different set of frequencies might need slightly more, slightly less saturation. And doing it parallel also just makes it so that it doesn't jump up in volume. Then, because of this saturation, I've cleaned it up a little bit, you know. When we add this saturation, we add frequencies we like and frequencies we don't like. So you're kind of cleaning that up with this EQ, but it was a bit subtle. So don't overthink this bit. Just sort of listen, what has the saturation added, reduce that, boost things if you need to, but really the boosting comes from the saturation. Then, I like to call this Omari's Fresh Drum. So shout out Omari for this one. All this is just boosting the high above. We're adding a bit of air to the drums. We're using a plugin called Fresh Air. Hopefully you can see the plugin. No, you can't. So a plugin called Fresh Air, it's free. Who's it by? Slate Digital. Go get it. It's brilliant on vocals. And when you put it on your drums and get it above 12K, it sounds really good. So really all you need to do here is just sort of boost above 12K. You can either do this with a Fresh Air parallel. So the way I've set it up is we've reduced everything beneath 5K. So there's a cut off beneath 5K here. Then you get it into Fresh Air. Then you make it a bit wider. And the transient shaper, I think you don't really need this on, to be honest. And then you just blend it in about 10%, 5%. And all you're doing, you could just got to imagine it like it's a parallel of high-end frequencies that are really wide, and it's just making it so that that high-end, that sizzle wraps around the listener rather than sort of being either quite mono or quite in your face. You kind of leave that for the mids and the high mids, and the really high airy frequencies you push to the side, but you blend it in as a parallel. This, I would say, is not an essential thing, because sometimes that sizzle isn't always the best in certain styles of tracks. But when your drums are very mid or high mid focused, so anywhere from 10k below, and then 1k onwards, if it's lacking above 10k, then this is suitable. If not, don't worry about it. Then I'll just add a bit of a clipper. This is free clip. I'll just kind of find where the drums are clipping at and just reduce it a bit. If I take all of this off. So that's an extreme version of it. As you can see on the left here, that line kind of indicates where we've got it. So I kind of like to just shave off some peaks with it, really. Until that line starts to kind of be its own thing, then do it. You don't want to overdo it, because then things just sound a little bit too clippy and a little bit too distorted, more distorted than you'd like. But like I say, all we're really doing is shaving off some peaks. And then finally, I put a bit of a limiter on. So yeah, I'll just put a bit of a limiter on just to kind of catch the peaks in the same way that the free clip is doing. But I kind of go for a more of a fast release and kind of just get it to work quickly with what I'm doing. All this is just to kind of catch the top bit of what we've clipped off and just allow the limiter, the drums to go into the limiter just a little bit. Just enough so that we're kind of boosting the floor of the drums, the quieter bits, a bit louder. And then yeah, that's it really. The gain and the EQ are just for automation, so I won't worry about that. But yeah, that is kind of the full process of how I would do the drum bus, and bits about how I would do each individual channel. I tried to keep this video quite quick and kind of get through things quickly, because I could sit here for like an hour and a half and mix drums. But if you want a full tutorial, I've got a mix from scratch coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that. But for now, you want to keep in mind that when you mix your drums, take breaks. Reason being, if you don't take breaks, you risk getting fatigue from the high frequencies, especially if you're using headphones. So when you're mixing your drums, take a little break in between, refresh your ears, because when you come back, the mistakes will be obvious. So yeah, thank you guys for watching the video. I might make a video a bit more in depth about how I actually get the drums to this point. So making drums sound good before mixing, because this is more of a mixing video. So let me know if you want that. And if this video was helpful, leave a comment, let me know where you're watching from. Send this to a friend who needs help. And yeah, like, subscribe, peace.